All right, guys, welcome back to another edition of Texans Unfiltered, a Houston football podcast for your Houston Texans. I am Youngarigold, and man, got a good show for you guys today. We got, oh man, my screen is making it to where it's super. There we go. Get that red out. Bang. Got a good show. Aaron Wilson will be joining here in about 15 minutes. Keep us up to date on some of the coaching searches, assistant coaches, and where we're at with that. The Texans hired, I believe his name's Chris Murphy, chief operations staff, something like that. Not a coach thing. 713 Ruben, what up? So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about where the coaching staff is, and then we'll get into maybe some other things. I doubt we'll really get into the draft. We're still pretty far away. I think all the media are pretty much in Super Bowl mode right now. But we'll talk about Aaron for a little bit, get some things off of from him regarding the Houston Texans. Then we'll move it on to some other things. But first, we need to start with our daily Unfuck Yourself. So yesterday, since I don't stream on Thursdays, it was Hustle You Can Do It. Today's Unfuck Yourself. Relentlessness is a force of nature that is available to all human beings. It's easy to take your life on when you're enthusiastic or excited or determined. But what do we do when all that's gone? Be relentless. Sheesh. All right. So let's start first with the fact that Andre Johnson was not inducted into Hall of Fame last night. For anybody that knows anything about me, anybody that knows anything about Texans Unfiltered, our first episode was about Andre Johnson when he was inducted into the Ring of Honor at NRG and for the Houston Texans. For me, I think Andre Johnson, love JJ. I think JJ's. I think JJ is probably the best player, especially when you combine what he did on and off the field. Like it's somewhat undebatable. I think Andre Johnson, though, to me, is my favorite player of all time. When you watch Andre Johnson film and you watch Andre Johnson on the field, he was far and away the best player on the field for a solid, 7 years. He never had the stats that were needed to be considered that. Always had yards, always had receptions, never had touchdowns. I blame Gary Kubiak. There's not a lot of things I blame Gary Kubiak about, but the lack of use of Andre Johnson in the red zone will forever be one of those questions that nobody can ever answer. Andre Johnson was a man amongst boys every Sunday. Andre Johnson was always open, probably one of the greatest route runners we'll ever see. He didn't look fast, but he was. He had a long stride. And he was just a physical beast in so many ways. Andre Johnson not being inducted into the Hall of Fame last night is a travesty. Honestly, when you look at the list, and not to take away from any of the Hall of Famers that were inducted last night, Andre Johnson had every reason to get in. Top 11 in receiving yards, top 11 in receptions. And on top of that, he played such an intricate role in the Houston Texans and where they were, right? Like from like a national perspective. Andre Johnson was just that dude. And the fact that he's not in the Hall of Fame it's honestly embarrassing. Like, I understand that it's hard for wide receivers to get in the Hall of Fame, and there's been some good ones and, all of that. Like, obviously, Jerry Rice, Terrell Owens, like all those guys, they all belong to be there. But you can't tell me outside of Jerry Rice, maybe Terrell Owens and Randy Moss, that Andre Johnson isn't the fourth best wide receiver all time. The stats don't back it from a touchdown perspective. But the film backs everything. Film only, Andre Johnson is a top 5 wide receiver all time in the NFL. All time. And the fact that he is not in the Hall of Fame is It's astonishing. I just don't understand it. I don't understand what goes into it. I do think that the Houston Texans, from an organizational perspective, need to do a 10 times better job of promoting and pushing Andre Johnson. There seemed to be no real marketing or push from NRG when it comes to the Hall of Fame and Andre Johnson. And I'll say this. I promise you, when JJ Watt is up, you will see the Texans organization push harder than they've probably ever pushed for anything. And the fact that we're not seeing it about Andre it blows me away. It absolutely blows me away. The team should be doing a much better job promoting and pushing Andre Johnson into the Hall of Fame. This isn't something that is minor in any form or fashion. One, it's the first Texans player that can be inducted. Two, it's a player that should be inducted, like a surefire should be in. And yet we're not seeing anything. The occasional tweet about it. But outside of that, what are you doing? Why is Cal McNair not talking about this? Why isn't Janice McNair talking about this? Why isn't Nick Caserio talking about this? All these things should be happening, and they're not. And they're failing Andre Johnson. Very similar to how they failed him at the end of his career. And it's a travesty. Andre Johnson is the reason why I became a Texans fan. He is the sole reason why I became a Texans fan. I had to watch every Sunday to see what he might do. Take away the Cortland Finnegan shit. From a play perspective, the dude was a monster. An absolute monster every Sunday. Not only that, very rarely hurt. Very rarely hurt. Had to deal with average quarterback play. Actually, before he dealt with average quarterback play, he had to play with bottom 5 quarterback play for what, 5 years? Then Schaub came and, it worked out. I think Schaub and him had a really good connection. I think it worked. Schaub was, I think Schaub was a really good quarterback for this team. I think the team did a really good job of building around Schaub and having the right pieces. But the fact that he had to deal with, he didn't have Peyton Manning. He didn't have Joe Montana. He didn't have Steve Young. He didn't have a Dante Culpepper. He didn't have Carson Palmer. He didn't have Kurt Warner. Looking at the rest of the names, I don't know who Tim Brown's quarterbacks were, but Tony Gonzalez, I think he had some Joe Montana. Isaac Bruce had Kurt Warner. Randy Moss had just great quarterbacks. Brady. Terrell Owens had Steve Young, Joe Montana. Larry Fitzgerald. What do you have? He had Kurt Warner played for the Cardinals for a little bit, right? And then also Carson Palmer there at the end. Dude, he had Matt Schaub for 5 years. 4 years of top Matt Schaub, and then a year of just pick 6 Matt Schaub. Totally different conversation. But there is no reason, there's no case to be made as to why Andre Johnson did not get into the Hall of Fame this year. No reason. And it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing for the organization. The fact that he's a Texan should not play a part into why he didn't get in. That was a different Texans team. That was a different time. Not only that, from a philanthropy perspective, the dude was on top of everything. He did so much for the city. He's still tied to the organization. I'll never understand it. He should have been in last year. Definitely should have been in this year. And this better not be one of those situations where you have to wait 4 or 5 years. And this also better not be a situation where J.J. Watt gets in before Andre Johnson. It can't happen. He needs to be in next year. props to John McClain for being the only one that really pushed Andre Johnson. John McClain has been the champion for Andre Johnson for years. And the fact that nobody else is pushing this guy the way that he should be pushed, it's embarrassing. It really is. The organization let him down. And the organization had every reason to push this even more. With everything that was going on with the team and the momentum that we have from D'Amico Ryans and where we think we're going, this was just another case, another situation where you could have added more momentum. And they dropped the ball. They dropped the ball. And it's disappointing to a guy who gave you everything he could. And it shouldn't happen. Yeah, no, for sure. Byron brings up a good point. It would really help Dre's case if he didn't have to. I mean, yeah, to an extent, right? Like, this wasn't, like, let's be honest, like, this was like a year thing, right? Like, I get what you're saying. Like, from the deep balls, you know, Schaub wasn't really hitting him in stride. So, for sure. But there were times where he was, you know. There were also times where in the end zone he was wide open, you know, 30, 40 yards downfield, and Schaub will put it there. I agree with you. Like, he didn't have elite arm strength to be able to do that every time, but I'm more talking about, like, with Gary Kubiak in the offense, why he didn't use him specifically in the red zone. Like, why aren't we running fades to Andre, crossing routes to Andre? Like, he's a physical beast. This dude, and a great route runner. Had hands, baby soft hands that caught everything. I don't know, man. It's pretty disappointing to think about. And like I said, the Texans had an opportunity here to really capture some more momentum. You know, everything is going in the direction that everybody wants, right? They were praised for their, first off, they were praised for their head coaching search, and they killed it. They killed it. They did everything they were supposed to do. Then they hired the guy that gave you every story you could possibly hope for. Former Texan, lived in Houston, a player's coach, number one defensive coordinator, number one defense, coming home, wife's from here, has a house here, made the hire, Nick's happy, it's all working. We're getting a different Nick Caserio. You have no reason to talk about the Texans until draft comes around. Super Bowl week, I just saw a clip where Dan Orlovsky was shitting on the Texans at the Super Bowl, at Radio Row. You had an opportunity to double down, and you didn't. And you failed Andre Johnson. And that shouldn't be allowed. We can't be the Lions. And I'm not saying we are, right? I know Andre has relationships and he's in the building and things of that nature. I'm not saying that it's that bad. But come on, we could do so much more. And there's no reason not to. So, not really sure what's going on. Not sure why they didn't do it. But it is what it is. All right. Matt Burke is the new defensive coordinator. Is that a thing? Texans set to retain. All right. So Patty Storm just put out Texans set to retain special teams coordinator Frank Ross, which is great. I know Frank Ross was a Nick guy last year. He was the one that was like his main coach he wanted. And it looks like, Matt Burke to be named defensive coordinator for the Houston Texans per NFL Network. I don't know how to feel about that. I've heard mixed reviews on Matt Burke. We'll have to see how that goes. But we'll have to just play it out. I don't know enough about Matt Burke. Let me pull it up. I know he was like, DC? Not much on Wiki. Dolphins assistant Burke promoted to defensive coordinator. So Brian Flores fired him as defensive coordinator. And then he was a defensive line coach in Arizona. Not a lot, not saying a lot. There wasn't a lot of development going on in Arizona when it came to the defensive line being developed in any form or fashion. JJ was there. I'm sure, I would assume that JJ had something to do with it. I don't know. I think that might be a little bit of a stretch. I'm sure they crossed paths at some point, but Yeah, but anyway, so moving on from Andre Johnson, I do think it's a missed opportunity by the Houston Texans. And it's just disappointing. It's disappointing because it would have been the first Texans in the Hall of Fame. You know, like there was just an opportunity here for the Texans to add a guy to the Hall of Fame, which is huge. You know, and not only that, not add a guy, but add a wide receiver. That's huge. Like that's a thing in itself, and totally missed the boat on that. So, all right, Aaron Wilson should be joining shortly. I know he's on. He's on with Sean Salisbury. He'll hit me up when he's on his way. Just messaged him. But yeah, all right. So Matt Burke, new DC. Frank Ross is retained as special teams coordinator. Who's the guy? What is it? Chris Murphy. Hold on, let me pull up Patty's tweets. All right, so we got Matt Burke. Frank Ross is staying. All right. Texans have hired. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't even know where I pulled that name from. Texans have hired Nick Cray as their chief of staff. Cray joined the 49ers after serving as the assistant director of football ops at NC State for 2 seasons. Prior to his time at NC State, Cray was director of football ops and player development at Ball State University. So this guy, I don't know enough about this position to be like, that's going to be a thing. But I know that he was the one that, let him out of the locker room with the boombox. He would carry the boombox. Seems like a character guy to an extent. Obviously not an Easterby guy, but kind of playing a very similar role to Jack Easterby from an operations perspective, from a player development perspective, more off and on the field, which is great. You need to have those types of guys in the building, somebody for the players to go to. But Matt Burke is, I don't know enough about Matt Burke. I will say this, like the people that are worried about defensive coordinator, D'Amico is going to oversee the defense to an extent, right? Like it's not like he's going to bring in a DC and just let the DC do what he needs to do. I would assume D'Amico is going to be pretty heavily involved in the defense from a schematics perspective and from an implementation perspective come Friday when they implement the game plan for Sunday, or, Tuesday when they implement for Thursday, or Saturday when they implement for Monday night games. But I'm not going to freak out like everybody else. I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh my God, I don't like this guy. I don't know enough about this guy. I don't think he has enough of a career yet to say like this is a bad hire. This is a good hire. But I will say that, you kind of have to trust D'Amico. It's interesting. I think one of the things I brought up a couple weeks back before D'Amico was hired was the fact that, he's a younger head coach, and, he spent his entire coaching career in San Francisco. So there's some limitations of, who his ties and his connections. And you can't expect him to come out and hit a home run at every assistant coach position. It's going to take time. But the one thing I will say is that's one of the benefits of having Nick Caserio is you have a guy who has, a 20-year career in the NFL, has relationships all throughout the NFL, and can bring in other coaches to help build the staff for D'Amico, which is something to lean on. And it's one of the benefits of having a guy like Nick Caserio as your general manager is he does have connections at other places to be able to do that. A lot of people I hope Gridiron Takeover, I hope Bobby Slowick is hired as OC. I think a lot of people would like that. I wouldn't be against it at all. I'm all for anything that you can take from Little Shaney. I love that offense. I love the way it works. I think it's a quarterback-friendly offense. It's just something you need no matter what you do, whether it's, Bryce Young or Davis Mills or Derek Carr, which sounds like he's going to the Saints. So a quarterback-friendly offense is key. Obviously, that's why Matt Schaub was able to do what he did. No reason to not want that. I would say that, maybe Thomas Brown is another guy that the Texans could tap into. He's assistant to the head coach and the tight end coach for the Rams. Obviously, they interviewed him for a head coaching position. You have to wonder if there's a spot somewhere on the coaching staff for Thomas Brown. We'll just have to wait and see how it goes. But yeah, I mean, it's starting to fill up, which is what we're looking for. Things start to really kick into the draft come Monday of next week. I'd say Tuesday of next week. There's a little Monday Super Bowl hangover. Everybody talks about the Super Bowl depending on how great the game is. And then we're getting into the draft. We're going to start hearing a lot of smoke. Combine will be coming up in March. And that's when all the talk really starts. So that'll be happening. And then, and free agency. When does free agency start? Anybody know? Let me pull that up. NFL free agency starts March 15th. So we're about a month away from free agency starting. I haven't even looked at the list of free agents. I mean, it'll give me something to do. Also, next week, next Friday, I got Ian Wharton to come on. If you guys aren't familiar with Ian, go follow him on Twitter let me pull it up for you guys. NFL Film Study. Great film breakdowns. Has a scouting background. Just put out a thread on Bryce Young. I wanted to bring him on. One, he's been on the show before. Two, just a really smart guy to talk football with in general. And really want to talk about the quarterbacks in this draft. Like I said, he's been doing film and scouting for quite some time. And just a good dude. So we're going to talk about the quarterback class next year. Next Friday, 8:30. And I also have some other stuff I'm working on as well. Working on James Palmer, working on Derek Klassen, working on a bunch of draft stuff for you guys. I'll continue to do that. And I'll start to work on free agency too, and start to get some people on here to talk about free agency prior to the draft. So definitely got some content coming for you guys. Hope you guys enjoy the show. Look, if you guys are here right now and you guys don't like and subscribe to the channel, please like, subscribe, tell a friend. I just bought a dope-ass camera so I can give you guys the best view possible with better quality. That's coming. Working on intros, working on new logos. I'm going to revamp this shit, and I'm going to do everything I can to give you guys the best content 3 days a week. And I'm doubling down on all of it. So be here early. And like I said, turn the notifications on so you guys are aware when I go live. Looks like Aaron's running a little behind. All right. So while we wait for Aaron, appreciate everybody in the chat. You guys all fucking rock. All right. So now with the coaching staff. So Matt Burke is DC. Like I said, I don't know enough about Matt Burke to say, like, I can't give it a grade. And also, like, when you think about a DC, especially a younger DC, I think he was only a DC for 2 years in Miami. From head coaches, it's not just about development of players and building a culture. It's also a development of staff, right? I appreciate it, Jerry. This is just the webcam. I bought an actual like studio camera. I'm really like I want JT O'Sullivan quarterback school type quality for you guys. And how's the audio sound? Did a new mic. Let me know if the audio sounds all right. But when it comes to head coaches, it's not just about development of players. It's also about the development of your assistant coaches, right? If you look at, Sean McVay and what he's created in Los Angeles, and you look at Shanahan and what he's created with the Niners, just because they've had, prior experience doesn't mean what they did is what they'll be. A good head coach is able to take an assistant coach and start to mend and develop a little bit more. And so anything that you're seeing from Matt Burke in the past, I wouldn't put too much thought into it. DeMeco is going to implement his defense, his style of defense, his style of coaching. And, you have to hope that Matt Burke comes in with an open mind, takes what DeMeco says, and kind of runs with it and starts to become, seeing it through his own lens, but as the vision of DeMeco and what DeMeco envisions this defense to be. So, like I said, I'm not going to freak out over Matt Burke. I already started to see people on the timeline yesterday. We're like, oh God, Matt Burke. I don't know, man. Let's wait and see. But when it comes to the offensive coordinator, it might be a little different because D'Amico is on the defensive side of the ball. It's where he's played his whole career. It's where he's coached his whole career. He's going to have to find an experienced offensive guy. It doesn't necessarily need to be an experienced offensive coordinator, but it does need to be an experienced offensive guy that he can give the reins of the offense to. Obviously, he'll oversee it. He'll play a part. He'll tweak things that he thinks should be tweaked, but he needs a guy that he can count on to run the offense. And, Bobby Slowick looks like the guy. We'll see. It's going to take some time. I would assume by the end of the weekend, there's also, you got to keep in mind, there's two teams still playing. The Eagles and Chiefs are still playing. They both have really good staffs. That could be another reason why they're waiting for to name the offensive coordinator. They're also waiting to finalize the coaching staff. Brian Johnson, the quarterback coach for Philadelphia, maybe that's a promotion that Nick and D'Amico are interested in and bringing him over as the offensive coordinator here. Eric Bieniemy is a name that, he's tied right now to Indy. I think there were also talks of another team. I'm trying to think. I think it was Carolina or there was somewhere else that Eric Bieniemy was tied to as potentially going as the OC. Maybe Eric Bieniemy's open to coming here as the OC. I think it'd be good for Eric Bieniemy to come out and kind of create his own offense, show what he's capable of as an offensive coordinator outside of Andy Reid. So I think there's plenty of opportunities. I think it's going to still take a couple days. I wouldn't expect this coaching staff to be finalized. It could happen at any time. Pat would know more. If you guys aren't following Pat Storm on Twitter, you guys definitely need to be. Oh, Ravens. That's right. He was tied to the Ravens. If you guys aren't following Pat, make sure you follow Pat at Patrick Storm HTX. If you're not following Aaron Wilson, make sure you guys are following Aaron Wilson as well at Aaron Wilson _NFL. Just shot him a text. Let me shoot him another text. Frank Ross being back is huge. Frank Ross, I don't know enough about Frank Ross. I know we had a great special teams unit last year. But prior to him being here, I don't know enough about like what he's done or accomplished, but I do know within the building when Nick Caserio brought in Frank Ross, that was like Nick's big win last year was landing Frank Ross. And so it's good to see that's, they were able to retain him as well. That special teams unit last year was really good. Really, really good. And so it's good for them to be able to double down on that. Still a lot of stuff to, fill out on the coaching staff, though. You have wide receiver coaches, tight end coaches, offensive line coaches, secondary, cornerback, linebackers, D-line, strength and conditioning. There's a lot of spots that need to be filled. I don't know. It's weird how that can just roll off like that. But yeah, so all right. Maybe we got Eric Bieniemy. Maybe, yeah. I mean, like Gridiron Takeover said, he's tied to the Ravens right now, with Greg Roman stepping down. So we'll see where that goes. I mean, I'm not opposed to it. I'm more open to Eric Bieniemy being an offensive coordinator than I was for him being head coach. And a lot of it has to do with just like some of the things that you hear, like especially like the first year when he was. I don't think a lot of people know this, but year one before David Coley, Eric Bieniemy was in conversations, like heavy conversations. Like they were talking. There was a point where it looked like Eric Bieniemy was going to be the head coach of the Houston Texans, and then it changed like that. He wanted full roster control. And from what I heard and what I understand, and Nick was not ready to give that to him. So if he wants to build a reputation outside of Kansas City and have the opportunity to be a head coach, look, the guy's interviewed, I think it's for 16 teams over the last 4 years. It's going to, he can come here and be an OC and be able to really rebuild his reputation and what he's capable of doing as an OC outside of Andy Reid. I think that's a big part. When you look at that offense, I mean, if you take Eric Bieniemy away, does that offense still roll? Most likely. if you take Andy Reid, if you take Andy Reid away, will that offense still roll? No. If you take Eric Bieniemy away, will that offense still roll? Most likely. Why? Because it all stems from Andy Reid. That's a big shadow for him to crawl out of. All right, let me shoot Aaron one more text. I'm not sure what's going on. The dude's never done this to me before. Sorry, guys. Actually, I can't text him from my computer because he has an Android. How's everybody else feeling this morning? Tell me, guys, how you guys are feeling in the chat. Let me know. What are you guys most excited about right now? Obviously, the draft's right around the corner. Assistant coaches, things of that nature. Tell me what you guys are excited about. Tell me what you guys are thinking that this team's doing right, and drop them in the chat. Probably busy because of the DC hire. Clint Kubiak as quarterback coach. That would be awesome. I like Clint. I like Clint Kubiak. Anybody from that style of offense, right, would be a win. But yeah. All right, let's see. So waiting for Aaron to text me back. Can't wait to dig into free agency. Oh, shit. All right, well, he's got a lot going on, so he's not going to be able to make it. He said it's going to have to be later. All right, I'll reschedule it. Yeah, free agency. It'll definitely, it'll show where we're headed. It'll also show where this team is. Free agency is going to be an exciting time. It'll definitely give us a clear understanding of where this team is trying to go from a scheme perspective. And there's some good names out there. Like, there's not a lot of wide receivers. There's a good tight end free agency class, which is great. This team needs a tight end. Mike Gesicki would be a guy. Let me finish texting Aaron. All right, I'll reschedule Aaron for later today. I'll let you guys know. So yeah, a good tight end class in free agency, decent defensive line class, right? De'Aaron Payne. There's a couple players that are worth noting. There's a couple Eagles players that are up. So free agency, there's definitely some potential. We have money, obviously. I think I was looking. It's like, what is it? Is it 35 right now? But I think we can get up to 65 million, and then next year, I believe the Texans are over $100 million in cap space available. So I don't know if, like, I look at that and I say, are we going to, go heavy this year? Or are we going to sign a couple pieces here and there, build through the draft, then the following year really hop into free agency and grab as many players as possible? I do think, there was lots of rumors that, Nick Caserio was talking about, not this press conference, but the last press conference, that, like, this is the year that he's going to hop into free agency. So we'll have to see. Happy Friday, my guy. I saw that the Cardinals played Chandler Jones out of position when they had Hassan Reddick, which is concerning, but kind of had to out of necessity. Yeah, I think at the time, you're trying to put the best players on the field. And when you have a situation like that, you're doing what you can. I'm not going to put a lot into that, but we'll have to see. D'Amico's already talked about playing to players' strengths and putting them in a position to succeed. So I'm not going to read too much into some of the things that happen in Arizona, and see, where they go. New coach opportunity for Houston. Yep. Draft, coaching staff, ready for it all. Fantastic. Me too, man. It's an exciting time to be a Texans fan. Texans had the opportunity last night to double down on it by really pushing Andre Johnson and promoting him and getting him into the Hall of Fame, and they failed us. Yeah, waiting to hear about OC and new quarterback. All right. I hope for at least 2 big name free agent hires. All right, Jerry, who would you want? Who do you want as a free agent? Sarah says anybody from the Shanahan tree. I think we're all kind of in that same spot. I think anybody from the Shanahan-Kubiak tree is going to be huge for this team. Quarterback-friendly offense is where we need to be looking. I'll probably will cover the Roughnecks. I like what the XFL did in its first year. Definitely ready for the NFL Combine. It's not where you learn a lot about a player from an eval perspective, but it's where you learn a lot about a player from, like, a height, weight, strength, things of that nature. Running around in shorts, not being covered, not going to tell you a lot. But definitely going to be a place to, see something. I love the combine. It's something I watch every year. Really excited about the draft. I think the draft is probably my favorite part of the year, even outside of like the games and stuff. Watching people succeed, watching them reach their goals. That's ultimately what it comes down to for me. Like, you're watching these kids who had this dream or they're still kids, but like from when they were younger, reach the goals that they had set for themselves. And a lot of work goes into it. And seeing these players be able to reach that level, it's just amazing. It's amazing. The following year cap will be affected by renewing contracts for Tunsil and Howard. Sure, but I mean, when you have over $100 million, that's like a drop in the bucket. There's lots of things that they can do with those contract extensions. I wasn't happy there were rumors they wanted veteran quarterback to Texans. I think the rookie should do it, bro. Yeah, I can understand that. I don't know. I think we've talked about this. I talked about this the other day. I talked about the different paths and where they can go and what they can do. It's not just one path, and it really depends on, everything comes down to how they view this quarterback class. You can't just grab a quarterback and expect that to be like, okay, we found our quarterback. Like, the quarterback there has to be a level of love with the prospect for you to feel comfortable taking him. And he has to be identified as the guy that's going to lead you to where you want to go. And I think a lot of people just assume that that's the case already. There's questions about there's a question about every quarterback in this draft. If you look at the years where there's the Andrew Lucks, the Trevor Lawrences, the Joe Burrows, the like everybody, right? All the top quarterbacks. There's always this definitive, like, no question, this is the guy. Obviously has weaknesses, but this is the guy. This year, it doesn't seem to be the year where that's the case. There's questions about every single quarterback prospect in the draft. There isn't really a consensus. Like, people say it's Bryce, but a lot of that just has to do with the success in college. So, I don't know. It's interesting. Linebacker, yeah, Tremaine Edmonds would be awesome. All right. Julius loves the Roughnecks. Help us a lot. Yep, I agree. So is Brian Johnson your OC favorite right now? Also, we got to snag Hargrave or Payne. Also, a wide receiver, center, tight end. Lots of good tight ends this year. No, I wouldn't say Brian Johnson is my favorite. I would say probably Bobby Slowick would be my favorite. Just coming from Shanahan, relationship with D'Amico already. D'Amico has an understanding of the offense and how it's implemented. I think Slowick would probably be my favorite. But Brian Johnson, I think, could be, potentially somebody that, somewhat of a dark horse. Maybe somebody nobody's talking about. In regards to, Hargrave or Payne would be amazing. One or the other would be fantastic. Wide receiver, I think DJ Shark is like the number one wide receiver available. Who knows what else happens. It's the offseason. Players get cut. Players get traded. We've all been through that with DeAndre. Like, you just never know. But definitely need a center and definitely need a tight end. Is there a good quarterback coach to be hired? The young Texans quarterbacks need a guru. I'm not sure, Sarah. I think it probably would have been something I would have kept Pep around for, just specific to the quarterbacks. But you have to wonder if he would be willing to take something like that. I'm not sure about the quarterbacks coaches. That's a good question, though. I'm going to the draft. I'm hyped. I would love. That's awesome, TJ. That's going to be dope. Where's it at this year? We have to get a DT in free agent. I agree. So they just hired the Arizona D-line coach. Yep, as a defensive coordinator. Nate Davis from the Tits would be great. I don't know enough about Nate Davis. But yeah. All right. Well, workday's starting. Didn't expect this to go this late. Sorry about Aaron Wilson, guys. I will have him on later today. I'll figure out some time to record. I'll either go live or I'll pre-record it. Also, next Friday, Ian Wharton will be on the show. We're going to talk a lot about this quarterback class, so make sure you guys tune in. I'll schedule that out. You guys will be able to see that. Like I said, studio cameras on the way, better lighting's on the way, got the mics. Really going to do everything I can to provide like the highest quality content for you guys as we move forward. Really appreciate you guys sticking with me. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Like and subscribe. Turn on the notifications. Texans Unfiltered. Got a new logo being worked on. Intros being worked on, outros being worked on, music being worked on. This isn't something I take lightly. This is going to be something that I continue to really build on. Really want to give you guys the best content possible and also just give you a different thought process and a different opinion on the Houston Texans outside of the local media who just basically reiterate or regurgitate whatever it is that everybody else says. So with that being said, I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend. Enjoy it. It's going to be nice out. And with that being said, enjoy the Super Bowl. I'll catch you guys next week.